You're listening to the Cinemental Podcast.
Shall we begin?
Welcome back to the Cinemental Podcast, where we discuss mental health in cinema, television, and popular culture, and how it is portrayed. What did they get right? What did they get wrong? And what should you know about mental health? I am Jeffrey Jones, and I'm a screenwriter as well as a professor of screenwriting, and I'm joined, as always, by my brother, America's psychiatrist, Dr. Joshua Jones, who, as well as never had gone on an impossible mission. He can do it all. He's a general and forensic psychiatrist.
Jeff, I choose to accept this mission. Let's do this.
I love it. Okay, we want you to start your week off right with our podcast, so we drop a new episode every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern, and again Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern, where we do a more supplemental deep dive into a specific topic and possibly some news and more pop culture-y stuff. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcast, or you can watch our hottest, spiciest clips and full episodes on the YouTubes.
Jeff, I don't think you should call the Thursday episode content supplemental. I think that's going to hurt the Thursday content's feelings.
Fair enough.
I mean, we often bring really good stuff. I mean, I get what you're saying, but it's not supplemental.
No,
it's
there's
additional.
been times where I've
it's additional hot tent.
Yes, because supplemental and additional don't mean the same thing. This week, we're covering Mission Impossible. We're going to talk about MI1 today, and then Thursday, we'll talk about the franchise as a whole. We're recording this before either of us have had a chance to see the last Mission Impossible, the last in the series. Although I can't imagine there will be any mental health twists and turns, so I think we can cover the mental health of Mission Impossible. But Josh, tell us what we're covering today.
Well, Jeff, we're going to talk about trust. Mission Impossible is, at its core, a spy movie, which involves a lot of twists and turns and betrayals. So we're going to talk about some of the psychological and biochemical underpinnings of trust. We're also going to talk about some of the mental health ramifications of lying. Yeah.
Okay. A lot of spy-related mental health stuff. I love it. And we're going to make a lot of jokes about Tom Cruise. We're going to talk about some awesome stuff about filmmaking. This is going to be a fun one because this might be my favorite franchise in history, and I know that is a slap in the face to Star Wars. But the last three movies just really disappointed me when it comes to the old Star Wars.
No, that's fine. I've got no problem with that, Jeff. I mean, I'm not sure Star Wars is my absolute favorite top to bottom franchise. Mission Impossible movies, you can watch any one of them.
Yes.
On repeat.
Yep.
I can't say that about a whole lot. I was surprised at how rewatchable this original Mission Impossible was.
Agree. Stunts hold up. Every part of it holds up.
Now they had to dial up to get their internet connections, which was
so. I remember GoldenEye. She goes in and wants this high tech computer. And it's 512 kilobytes. It's whatever. It's oh man.
Right. And they're super. I had this moment where they were using their super fancy video watches, which were sci-fi in 1996. Yeah. All the time I'm getting notifications on my Apple Watch having to look at it.
Yeah. With the advent of AI, Josh, shockingly accurate the Star Trek computer, ship computer was. With all the things that it could do, shockingly accurate.
Yeah.
As to what the future is going to look like.
I am not convinced that Gene Roddenberry wasn't sent from the future.
I love that. Okay. Josh, let's dive in. But before we do have a sponsor this week.
Oh.
Which I'm very excited about. We're getting into the personal accoutrement space, if you will. Some accessories for men. With the rise of cybercrime, TikTok, and Pete Hegseth on Signal, security concerns have never been greater. So with the rise of self-detonating messages, we want to introduce you to the Blast Pack Fanny Pack, the only fanny pack rated for short-range micro-explosions. Whether you're on an airplane or on the John, sometimes you don't have 5 seconds before your message self-destructs. With triple-layer Kevlar heat-resistant vinyl and a very sexy tactical strap, the Blast Pack lets you get back to accepting that impossible mission around the home or office. Blast Pack will literally save your butt. Now available in black, camo, or vanilla sky.
Nice. Thanks to them. It's these sponsors that make this possible.
Absolutely. Every one of these sponsors is helping keep the lights on. Okay, so we're going to talk about Mission Impossible. If it's been a while since you've seen the original, obviously starts with Ethan Hunt, played by Tom Cruise. He's part of an elite spy unit, the Impossible Mission Force, which we don't find out the name of until the third movie. And things go very sideways on a mission in Prague. His whole team gets wiped out. The mission fails, and he's suddenly the guy everyone thinks is a mole. Classic, you're burned, now run setup. Ethan goes rogue to clear his name, find out who set him up, and recover the MacGuffin, a top-secret document of every undercover agent in the field. I think it was called the knock list. Ethan recruits a couple of disavowed misfits, including Luther Stickle, who becomes his ride-or-die for the rest of the franchise. And he sets a trap for the real traitor, IMF director Jim Phelps, who I think was the original character for the series, right? Jim
Yes,
Phelps
he was originally.
Yeah, we're going to talk about how they did him dirty.
Yeah, ask me the question, then cut me right off. No problem.
Jim Phelps, who faked his own death and sold out his team for cash. Ethan figures it out by doing what spies do best, wearing masks, dropping cryptic Bible verses, and pulling off a series of escalating stunts that would kill a normal person. It all leads to a high-speed showdown on top of a train barreling through the Channel Tunnel, because why wouldn't the climax involve a helicopter getting dragged into a tunnel? Ethan survives, clears his name, and walks away from the wreckage cooler than ever, setting the tone for an entire franchise built on deception, betrayal, and the fundamental truth that a movie will make $500 million if Tom Cruise runs and rides a motorcycle. All right, Josh, let's dive right in, and let's talk about Ethan Hunt. I know we're going to talk about trust, but I just want to talk about Ethan really quick. We've talked about this before. Does he have a psychological diagnosis, and is it narcissism?
Well, look, in this first one, I would say we don't get a lot of information about whether he has a diagnosis or not. As we go through the series, he doesn't actually show any symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
If he doesn't have any PTSD, he is the most resilient, fake person in history.
I don't think he does. I don't think you're the psychiatrist, obviously, but I don't think he does. I don't think they waste any time with that.
They don't waste any time on that. That's fine. So then the question I think that you asked is, does he have narcissism? I don't think I would diagnose him with narcissistic personality disorder. You don't actually see Tom Cruise with a lack of empathy and having it be all about himself. The lack of empathy is a core feature of narcissism, which it shares with antisocial personality disorder, two related yet separate conditions. Is he narcissistic? Sure. But as we've talked about a lot on this show, narcissism as a character trait, not necessarily a personality disorder, isn't maladaptive. In fact, you want to have that confidence. You want to have that ability to say, I can do it all. Interestingly, Tom Cruise plays a lot of characters with a lot of adaptive narcissism.
Yeah, it's so funny how this and Top Gun are basically the same character, where his primary mission is to save the people around him. And that's what Mission Impossible became, and didn't become that really until like the third episode. And actually in the second, the bad guy has a great line where he's like, he'd rather, dive into do some crazy acrobatic stunt than harm a hair on a security guard's head. And that's the rest of the season, or the series is basically exactly that. It's just a great kind of throwaway line. And the reason why I ask you about narcissism and about adaptive narcissism, which we've talked about a lot, is the notion that like he feels like he can do it all, but in these movies he can. So is it narcissism anymore if he's proved right time and time again?
Yeah, good question. No, not really. I mean, look, these are fantastical movies. Ethan Hunt is practically a superhero. He does things that nobody else can.
Right.
What I do think is really interesting in this, just taking the first movie, is he doesn't have all those superpowers yet. I mean, yes, he does some amazing things, but you and I both remarked he's got one of the best stunts, most realistic stunts in the entire series in this first one. It's one of the most kind of believable, I would say.
We're going to talk about that ad nauseum later. We're gonna. There's a whole segment we've got devoted to that. But yeah, he's very human. He's much more human in this first movie than I think in any others. Is what I think you're getting at.
But again, and I would defer to you as the filmmaker here. Again, I don't think they knew what they had in the franchise. It's the first movie. It's not like they had all 8 of them mapped out beforehand.
Correct. And the and this movie was more about something than the future movies have been, which are just popcorn eating flicks. But this movie was a lot about trust and how Ethan was sort of blindly trusting his boss, and it wasn't until Jon Voight shows back up and he starts to piece together in his head while he's talking to Jon Voight how it probably was Jon Voight, where he's like, aha, my mentor is not trustable. Don't trust anyone.
Right. It was also a reboot of an existing and well-loved franchise.
Right. So the first movie was a little more about something, but also a little less interesting. In my mind, like, I'm perfectly happy with just seeing Tom Cruise. There's not a lot of betrayal in the future movies. Him, Simon Pegg, Ving Rhames, they're not betraying each other. You can trust each other. They bring other people into the fold. The Alec Baldwin becomes someone where he blindly trusts Ethan later on. So it's not this series of double crosses the way it was in the first one. It's just sort of action, trying to find the various MacGuffins. So it's interesting that it became sort of less story-oriented as the movies go on. And let's talk about that. Let's talk a little more about the evolution of the franchise. Peter Graves was the original actor who played Jim Phelps, right?
Yes, correct. And there were 2 previous iterations of the television show. The earliest one, I think, was in the 60s, maybe early 70s, that started. And then they had a reboot in the 80s. And I actually remember watching both. I watched the original in syndication and then was super excited when they decided to do the reboot, I think for a couple years in the mid-80s. And Peter Graves, also from Airplane fame, he was the leader. He was the guy, and above all, he was good. He was the guy you could trust. So then they rebooted it and did him dirty, in my opinion. And I think I remember, and then refreshing my recollection for this podcast, I remember that a lot of people said, yeah, they did him pretty dirty. Even Peter Graves came out and said, no, that's not Jim Phelps. But it was a big twist. Now, you and I of course, as we watched this again, we knew what happened. But I can remember seeing it at the beginning and thinking, oh, great, this is going to be, a by the numbers Mission Impossible. Yeah. With you've got Emilio Estevez, Kristen Scott Thomas was big at the time. So here's the star crew you're gonna do this franchise around, and then they turn it on its head.
Yeah, well,
it's kind of a big deal at the time.
And you think Tom Cruise, he'll have the mantle passed to him,
correct,
by the good guy who retires or something, and that's not what they did. They betrayed. It's very interesting that you say that, Josh, because I'm watching all the Last of Us news right now with how vitriolic the lovers of the game are about this second season. And I didn't play the game, but I'm a huge Craig Mazin fan. I think he's crushing the second season. And I thought this last episode, where they go back in time to when, Joel tells Ellie that he, saved her, I thought that was a tremendous episode. And wow, are people hating on it. So I just wonder, if Mission Impossible 1 had come out today, would it have survived and gotten a second film with how much people just hate it? Or would the studio have rushed to try and fix that and do more fan service?
Yeah, I think that's an important question. especially as you and I talk in the popular culture space about that, what that would have looked like. I think that it would have just been killed. You would have had hashtag Jim Phelps is good and all this kind of stuff, which you just didn't experience back in the day.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting point. I wonder if it would have survived.
Yeah, we'd have been like # Jim Phelps. What does that mean?
Sure.
That's what a hashtag was before it was a hashtag.
Now, you and I know the # as an octothorpe, which is what its technical name is.
Jesus. Octothorpe?
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. That's what it. That's
so
what it is.
Awesomely nerdy. Like I love being related to you. Just knowing that someone that nerdy is out there gives me a lot of joy. Okay, so the series evolves, and obviously, the first movie, it's a lot about betrayal, coming into one's own, etc. Second movie's weird. Second movie's just a John Woo. It's almost anachronistic to the rest of the series. Anthony Hopkins comes in for a second. It's a little weird. The third movie, the tone of it is so dark. Starting with that opening sequence where Philip Seymour Hoffman is torturing Tom Cruise. I loved it. I loved that movie, but it was a little dark. Fourth movie, Brad Bird takes over and does the dumbest thing ever in the history of cinema, which is like, what if all the stuff that's always worked suddenly stops working? Okay, well, the conceit of these movies is that their technology is awesome. So that was just dumb. Fifth movie's where they find their stride. And from the fifth movie on, this is a series of films about this incredible group who does impossible missions, and if you can just dig a little deeper, you can always figure out how to save the ones you love. And so it is about trust. It is about overcoming odds for the power of love. And that's where I think, they really found their stride, is making this about trust. I want to ask you this because it has to just do with spies. Are all spies sociopaths?
No.
Okay. Explain that to me.
Oh, I just used one word. That was just a brief answer.
Oh,
that's the answer.
I don't care about and no one does, the analysts who are in the CIA. No one cares about. We only care about the field operatives. AMC tried to make a show once about the analysts. It was called Rubicon. You've never heard of it, neither has anyone else, because it was about analysts. But the people that are people who are doing wet work out there, how are they not sociopaths or psychopaths if they're out there killing and having no issues with it?
Well, we don't know that they're not having issues with it, right? That's the thing, is we don't have good studies that are publishable for national security reasons, identifying these people reasons, to say that they are sociopaths or not. I'm playing the odds on this one. If they were all sociopaths, if they all had antisocial personality disorder, then we likely wouldn't be able to make teams of them. They wouldn't be manageable, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying some don't have antisocial personality disorder. I'm just saying the odds are that the vast majority of them don't have antisocial personality disorder. Now, remember, you can commit sociopathic acts and not have antisocial personality disorder, not be a sociopath. The key difference is whether or not you are able to gin up empathy. And we are able to, or, the nation states are able to convince people that they shouldn't have empathy towards a particular group of people, such as enemy combatants, and go out and have them kill people. That's not to say that you don't have after effects of thinking about, oh my God, what did I do, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
That shows that you have empathy and therefore aren't a dyed-in-the-wool sociopath or psychopath.
Okay, I don't know that there's any study for this, so I'm going to ask you to just give me your opinion, your professional opinion, which is one of my favorite things about you, is that you like to stick to the science and you like to stick to the things that are known. So I know I'm asking you for a little bit of a stretch here. You have said before, and I think it's really interesting, that it's not out of the realm of possibility that psychopaths in real life tend to find each other, because like finds like is attracted to like. Mm-hmm. Isn't this the type of field that would just attract sociopaths? And so because of that, isn't it possibly fair to say that there's at least a higher percentage of these people who are sociopaths than say, My accountant?
Oh, I think that's fair, but
And
I think
how
that's
much
fair
higher?
to say. I would say it's probably below 50%.
Okay.
Just because I'm trying to imagine managing a cohort of people with antisocial personality disorder, and look, if we're, we don't really truly know, because of national security reasons and things like that, what it's like for the CIA and other spy organizations to manage a bunch of spies. I mean,
Right.
we occasionally get tell-all books or people who break the code of silence and things like that. That is in no way a systematic analysis of how this is going. It probably is known. I'm going to guess that the CIA or NSA or others have done some kind of systematic analysis of this that we're not going to have access to.
Right.
So yes, I agree with you. The percentage of people who have who are sociopaths, who have antisocial personality disorder, relatively well controlled, they're able to control their impulsivity,
Right.
could be good spies. But I still think I'm going to bet that the vast majority of them don't have diagnosable antisocial personality disorder, but they will commit antisocial acts in the
Right.
service of their profession.
I also think it's important to say that, and tell me again if you agree with this. I think that spies are more like con men than they are killers. I would imagine the actual murdering of people is a lot less frequent than the gathering of information, pretending to be someone you're not, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's a lot more like like being a con artist. I think I would make a great con artist. I don't think I have antisocial personality disorder, but I have always been able to say things with confidence and get people to,
Sure.
to agree with me. And sometimes I have no problem lying. If I think it's for the greater good, I have no problem lying to get what I want. I had to do it as an agent a few times, where it was like, I'm not necessarily hurting anybody, but I'm definitely helping my clients. I don't have any issue with that. Do you think that that's accurate, that they're more like con men than killers?
I think you're probably right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that it is by and large illegal for at least the United States to do state-sanctioned murders. So
Okay.
that's why I said it the way I said it.
Yeah.
I believe in you, America.
I think Barack Obama, bombed a wedding once, and he was like, "Oops." We're out there doing some awful stuff.
Okay.
No one can convince me otherwise.
I'm not saying we're not, but the
You
amount
know
of
stuff, Josh. You were in the military. You know things.
But the amount of information that we are gathering based on Humint and SIGINT and all that other kind of stuff far outpaces, most likely,
Right.
actual wet work. So
Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's talk a little bit about con artistry. And, this is getting a little bit far afield, but again, bringing it back to Mission Impossible, a lot of Mission Impossible was, the first one, was negotiating with other spies within his team, at figuring out how to con each other. What are the mental health implications of specifically the type of lives that are led by these con artist spies, or people who have to lie all the time? It's their job to lie. What are the mental health implications of that?
it depends on how much you value telling the truth or what you think the truth is.
Sure. Okay.
As to how much an impact lying has on your self-image. If you are purposely not telling the truth for a reason that you believe is forthright and justified, it is going to have less of a negative impact on your psychological well-being than if you are lying for reasons that you don't think have a greater purpose.
Right.
Now,
God, I wish more people had seen Spy Game, because it's such a good movie and it covers a lot of this mental health stuff. But I just don't think anybody watched it, even though it was a Robert Redford, Tony Scott directed, Brad Pitt starring. Such a good movie. Loved it. Anyway.
okay, so back to the psychological impact on lying. If you the other thing to think about lying is that the psychic toll it takes on your processing power.
Right.
So for every lie you tell, you have to remember you told it. If you want to keep the lie up, if you want to keep your cover going, and things like that, there's a whole artistry to lying that folks are trained in if they're employed to do subterfuge like spying, like, keep your lies simple, lie as little as possible, etc., etc. But it does take some horsepower to keep all that stuff straight.
Yeah, something I've thought is interesting, and this is what's fun about being a screenwriter is you get to just delve into the lives of people that you have no idea. And I was thinking about Spies the other day. I was thinking about the ramifications of, if you're always lying, how could you ever trust somebody else to not be lying? And can you form meaningful relationships when your worldview is everyone lies just like me?
It's way more difficult.
Yeah.
It's way more difficult to form meaningful relationships with somebody, especially, And again, we get to see dramatized, Hollywoodized versions of this, right? With two spies falling in love and they're lying to each other, a Mr. and Mrs. Smith type situation. That stuff's not real.
Right.
But what is real is that if you lie all the time, you're right. You assume other people are too. We have this tendency as humans to believe that our internal experience is more universal,
right,
than it actually is.
Right. Exactly. And it would take something really, really strong to pierce that. That's one of the things I loved about the first Daniel Craig James Bond movie, was that, like, as a viewer, it really did feel like he fell in love. He was James Bond. He was absolutely James Bond, but she came to his rescue. She saved his life when he was in the car and he was, dying of the poison or whatever. And it gained his trust. And in the end, he falls in love and then he's betrayed. And that betrayal is what sort of wounds him for the entire run of the Daniel Craig movies. But it was a spy who was never going to trust anybody and was always going to just take advantage of women. And they did something that made me believe that pierced that veil for him and let his guard down. I thought that was just so brilliantly well done. But it does take a choice. And I think that that's the important part about trust, is that I think the only way to build trust is to give it first. And this is an argument I've had so many times online. It's like, I'll trust you if you prove yourself. I don't think that's the way trust works. I think that you have to choose. You have to make a choice to trust, rather than make somebody else do it. Somebody has to go first. And that is the nature of trust, is that you're putting your belly out for someone to scratch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You talk about trust online, and the only thing I think about is the Leroy Jenkins meme.
Oh, God, I love that so much. I've used that as a joke so many times in scripts, which I'm allowed to do because I've never sold them. So, nobody's seen me use the joke. So I can use it as many times as I want until somebody buys it. It's a great joke.
So I think it's a really important thing that you said, Jeff. The best way to build trust is to be trustworthy.
Right. And the best way to believe in trust is to do it. The best way to believe that trust exists is to make it a part of who you are and that you trust people. Josh, one of the last things I want to talk about for this episode is the ridiculousness of if you choose to accept it.
Okay.
Can you really not choose to accept it?
Sure.
But we've never seen him do that.
And then whoever handed you the tape comes and kills you. That's what I'm going to assume.
And they tried to like turn that on its head a little bit with the Henry Czerny character in the last one that I saw, which is like you're kind of choosing to accept it when you join the Impossible Mission Force. But then why say it? Why still say every single time if you choose to accept it? And in the trailer for this new one, you know, they're like, well, yeah, if he chooses to accept it. So clearly it is a choice. But like, has there ever been someone in the history of the IMF who hasn't chosen to accept the mission?
I looked this up.
Okay.
And there is not an example of it. Yeah. So we never see anybody go, nah. I mean, there's been parodies.
But as viewers, we love that.
Oh,
and we know it.
It brings the hair on the back of my neck to attention.
Yeah. And I think it's just there to like show to the audience that it's like these guys aren't just being told what to do. They're choosing to do the impossible.
It's so dangerous that we're going to give you a choice. Look, if you don't want to do this, walk away. We get it because this mission is impossible. Right. Even though we have a 100% success rate.
Unless, of course, Jim Phelps, right? Jim Phelps?
Yeah.
Okay. So Michael Phelps is a Nepo baby.
No.
Oh.
Swimmer. Yeah. The only time I guess it wasn't successful was when Jim Phelps, successfully killed his whole crew, minus Tom Cruise, in the first movie.
I also love. There's been lots of parodies about Mission Impossible over the years. I love thinking about the improbable Mission Force.
Okay.
Right.
Where was that a parody?
It's just in my own head.
Oh.
Just like missions that are not impossible, but they're improbable. Like, go into Costco and buy one thing.
That's funny. That's a parody. Oh, I can make that in the next week and get that up. The Improbable Mission Force. That's fantastic.
Drive across Colorado without getting a windshield ding. I mean, just stuff like that.
Use Waze and cross this 6-lane highway. That's really funny. I'm into that.
Get laid while driving a Cybertruck. I mean,
that's funny. We mentioned this at the beginning, Josh, but I want to talk about it here and not Thursday. Obviously, the stunts are so incredibly impressive in the Mission Impossible franchise. You and I talked about this ahead of time, and you and I both agree that the most impressive stunt, I think by far, is in the first Mission Impossible movie when Jean Reno lets Tom Cruise go and he dangles over the floor.
Yeah,
that was the most impressive. It's the one I think about as soon as you ask me like stunts Mission Impossible. That's the one I think about. That was so cool. It was so cool. I could care less about him riding a motorcycle off of a hillside and parachuting into a train. Why is that one so good?
That one's so good because it was kind of the first one they did, and also in my mind, it was the most realistic of their unrealistic stunts because he gets dropped and he doesn't just plank it out. He is wobbling, he's moving his arms, he's trying to keep his balance. It looks like holy crap, he's actually going to do that.
Right. And it's imperfect, which I think is what I like about it. You're watching him make these micro movements, so it's imperfect and he's just doing. Like when they strap him to the side of a plane, they actually strapped him to the side of the plane, but like there's nothing to do there. You're just hanging onto a plane.
All the other stunts are impossible, and this one was improbable. But he did it.
But he did it. And yeah, still to this day, like that just makes me so on edge. I loved that stunt. Good on him for that. I just thought that was really well done. All right, Josh, I think that's all I've got for this week. We're going to talk a lot more about Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible. We're going to have a lot of fun on Thursday's episode, so please tune back into that. We're going to talk about the nature of a movie star. There's all sorts of stuff. So with that, Josh, Thanks, as always, for watching or listening to Cinemental and our coverage of Mission Impossible. If you like this episode, please subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. You can also watch clips of Cinemental on YouTube, where we'd love to hear what you'd like us to cover next. Follow Dr. Josh Jones, America's Psychiatrist, on Blue Sky. This has been a Large and in Charge production. For Josh Jones, I'm Jeff Jones, and we will see you on Thursday.
I want you to hit me as hard as you can.